10 o'clock to the work session. Who wants
to start off? I won't take too much time. Commissioners, start, but I know we've been talking about budget for but impact the budget. This process today and tomorrow is not the approval of the budget. This is just the opportunity for the departments and the outside agencies to come in and present their budget to you. If you have questions about their budget, obviously you can ask those. But this is not the last time you'll have an opportunity to do that. If it comes up and you have questions about particular budgets, we can call people back in to meet with you. But we will schedule from here until the budget is approved. I will put time on our agenda at the end of each agenda to discuss this further if you have questions that come up. Obviously, it's difficult because you can really only discuss this in an open meeting. You can't, because the board has to have this. If more than two of you want to talk about it, you have to be in this room with the camera on. So that's why I will put it on the agenda. It doesn't mean that you have to talk about it, but if you have questions, we'll have that opportunity. But if any of you individually have a specific question for a department that you would like to have them come back in, please let me know, and I will put them on an agenda to be here. But other than that, today is just their opportunity to discuss with you their budget.
So I just have a macro question for Mr. Lawfrey.
Yep.
The budgets you're formulating, projecting, is going to be attempting to have a flat mill levy, correct?
Commissioners, the budgets that you will see and that you have in your packets represent a flat mill levy. Now, there are things that had to be taken out that are probably, I don't know that you can continue it. It's sustainability. So if they took them out this year, some of these departments took some items out this year in order to get that flat mill levy. But there are items that will need to be put back into your budgets eventually, if not this year if you decide to. But this represents a flat mill levy. The only one I wouldn't say that about are the outside agencies. For the outside agencies, I simply included what was approved for this year. So anything that was approved for the 2024 budget is considered in the 2025 budget. Other than that, everything would be an enhancement for them. So the departments in the county have submitted you a budget that represents a flat mill levy.
And what percent will the budget increase over last year?
I do not know that off the top of my head. I can get that number for you. I can just tell you that it's a flat mill levy, and I did set aside some money for the courthouse repairs that we know will take not enough to cover what it's going to cost, but I would just set some money aside for that so that if we chose to, we might be able to pay ourselves back over a 10-year period with what I've set aside for now.
Yeah, just get that information. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So there's a lot of things that over the years have been put off as far as a sustainable budget that should have been in there that they didn't cover because they were trying to lower the mill levy. What we're going to try to do this year is put a few things off until maybe we'll have a better year next year or the year after. But they're different things than what we were having problems with, not scheduling sustainable budget.
Hopefully 2025 we will not see the inflation we've seen the past few years.
Got it. Okay.
Go.
Go.
Good morning again.
Morning, Connie.
The Council on Aging budget reflects a 1.997% increase from last year, so about $80,000 in total. The bulk of what we spend at the Council on Aging is in our workforce. We have 59 employees, which in 2020 we had 64 employees. So working on efficiencies and job responsibilities, increasing our volunteer activity. We will have 59 employees for next year. Reflecting about $130,000 decrease in overall personnel costs from budget year 2024 to 25, and that is capturing grant salaries in grants that we are actively applying for and have received allows us that little bit of buffer there with personnel for next year. But majority of the employees at the Council on Aging, we need bodies. So we have some folks who work between 2 and 5 hours a day, and most of that is during mealtime. So we have tried to take down the number of people that we have on our staff to just the number of hours that we need them, and like I said, have increased volunteers. We had 173 active volunteers last year. Overall in a year, saving the county about $650,000 in what they offer us to ensure that we can offer the programs that we do have. There is a lot of belt tightening in this budget, but we didn't necessarily adjust for inflation. So in order to make that less than 2% increase, we're going to hold tight to many of the budget lines that we have currently this year and find efficiencies in moving from print to digital in every possible way that we can, minimizing those costs that way. The increases that you'll see in the budget are for meals. About 36% of that $80,000 accounts for meal increases. As you know, this community gets older every year. More people age into qualifying for our program, so there's about a $30,000 increase suggested for meals. That accounts for about a 4.35% increase in our Meals on Wheels program. The other things that are budget increases, like events, meeting expenses, our volunteer recognition, those are inflationary increases, just to make sure that, especially for our volunteers that are saving us about $650,000 a year, that we offer them one reception, one dinner a year, to recognize them for their contribution. We did have, unbeknownst to us, Public Works was picking up a little bit of our vehicle maintenance costs. We have since remedied that, but in 2024, we didn't necessarily budget for that. So that is that increase that you see in vehicle maintenance. We now have all of those things routed to the right department. But they were taking on some of our vehicle lease costs and maintenance. So in order to right that and make sure the Council on Aging is paying for their own things, that's what you see there. Just looking at some belt tightening, you'll see that there's a $2,500 increase in leisure and learning supplies. That is a budget line that reflects there's an expense line and a revenue line for leisure and learning. So sometimes for the trips and the activities that we put on at the Council on Aging, we have to put out money before that money comes in to reserve tickets, to pay for fees, things like that. Those two budget lines offset. The increase reflects a 70% increase in participation at the Council on Aging this year. Our calendar is so full that to keep folks in and doing the things that they're doing, we are taking in more money but expending that money. That's a zero-based budget line. But overall, our budget comes in at just over $4.1 million. Like I mentioned, that's just a 1.997% increase.
Connie, on the mills, that 4.5 is that what includes for the contract we have? Okay.
And that will be up for bid again in 2025. Our catering costs and contract.
Okay. But the 4.5 is what you're looking at for next year. Is that going to change with the new bid? Or when that bid go out?
So we delivered about 107,000 meals last year. We're anticipating delivering over 110,000 meals this year.
But what he charges you, is there a percentage that, or the catering company, the people that prepare the meals, what is that cost expected to be? Is that where the 4.5 comes in?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Terry charges us $6.50. We charge $2. We're looking at, we'll be sending out notifications August 1st to let folks know that prices will be increasing for those meals on a sliding scale based on income. So that we'll implement that change October 1st. So for the folks who can pay more, we're going to ask them to pay a little bit more for that meal to help cover those costs. Because I would imagine that would likely be the same amount of increase year after year of people who will be eligible for Meals on Wheels.
You said it was going to go to $8.50, is that what you said?
Well, it's $6.50 that we get charged for that meal, so we're going to look at $3, $4, and $6.50 that we would charge participants. We have about 40% right now who can't pay.
Right, but the ones that are able to pay, what's the total? What's the dollar figure you're going to charge?
So it will be a sliding scale based on their
On
income.
their income, okay.
So $3, $4, and $6.50
Okay.
per meal.
But the bottom line is they pay what they can, and we continue going forward.
Sure, and that's why we apply for every local national grant we can, in addition to our Older Americans Act funds to cover that. So we bring in about 200 additional $1,000 to cover those costs.
Fundraising.
What's that?
And fundraising.
And fun, yes.
Yeah.
Have your private donations increased over last year as far as the fundraising events and that kind of thing? And what's the difference?
Yes. So in 2020, when I came, for example, our benefit, we made $17,000. Last year, we were over $50,000 for our benefit, in addition to increasing the number of private donors that we have every month. Good Shepherd is a thrift store in Tonganoxie. They give us $2,000 a month for our Meals on Wheels program. We didn't have that 2 years ago. But then private donors that help pay for meals for folks has remained pretty consistent for the last 4 years.
You can just find a place big enough to hold enough people.
Yes.
Always fill them up.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll be at the Riverfront this year, November 2nd, for our benefit.
And it'll be full.
And it'll be tickets are on sale, by the way.
So, I guess, Mark, this question's for Mark. Based on what Connie presented, and what you're figuring our budget's going to be, is that about 6 or 7% of our budget the Council on Aging would receive?
I think that number's about right. It depends on what, if you take into account the sales tax and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just rough
They're-
ballparking it here, between 6 to 7. It wouldn't be 8 or 9%.
No, they are one of the larger departments.
Right.
Because of the services that they offer. So they are, they're not the third largest, maybe fourth behind EMS.
So, a couple big takeaways. The rent column now is zero. That was almost $80,000 a year before the Cushing building.
Rent.
Oh,
rent,
yes.
rent. So that's a big deal. And then the volunteers. So basically, your office wouldn't be able to operate, if at all, without your volunteers. And
Not
you say
until-
$650,000 is what you're saving the taxpayer with your volunteer program. That's a big deal.
It's 2 hours every day driving their own personal vehicle to get those meals out.
And then another thing I always like to point out, the Meals on Wheels is not so much about bringing somebody something to eat, but it's allowing people to stay in their home longer because you got somebody checking on them every day.
That contact's important.
Yeah, personal contact, checking on them, allowing them to stay a little bit longer before they got to go to assisted living in a lot of cases. Anybody have anything else?
I know they really appreciate it when you
Yeah,
go
go
to
ahead.
those doors. Those people just really appreciate that meal.
Yep.
Absolutely. We're happy to do it.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks, Connie.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Con.
Thank you.
1015 solid waste. Morning, Tammy.
Again.
This shouldn't take
You make my
long.
back hurt just watching you walk up here.
I know.
It's been a while since my back hurt, but you remind me.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just looking
Terrible
forward
pain.
to the nap
The relief,
on
huh?
Wednesday. To finally be able to sleep.
Yeah, that back thing's terrible.
So my budget represents a 2.5% increase, and that's basically to the hauling contract.
Again, because you're basically a straight pass-through business.
Correct.
Whatever it costs you to operate is what you have to pass on.
Okay.
Any commissioners have questions for Tammy?
Let me,
Everything's
Asked earlier.
captured, correct?
Yeah.
Employees' wages, your employee benefit, everything is captured.
They are
We run this-
self-funded through the fees.
It's a,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
totally
inflation.
enterprise fund operation.
that's 78.
This one's pretty simple to me.
Yeah, it is, and I have no problem with this, but the 78,000 is from the increase of just of doing business nowadays, right? Yeah.
What are they saying the CPI is this year, Mark? Have they come out with the latest one?
You want the government's one, or
Yeah.
you want the real one?
Yeah. The real one, I think I
Our
know.
CPI or the government CPI?
Yeah, there's three, really.
It's somewhere around 3.4%.
Okay.
Our CPI is much higher because of the equipment that we use.
Specific things that
It's
affect that.
20 to 30% a year that we
Oil.
see. The oil, and at the transfer station, we don't use a lot of oil product, but the equipment
Yeah.
is just skyrocketing. You don't see it in the private sector as much, but and I should, what I mean by you at your home, but in the corporations that are buying heavy equipment, the heavy equipment is skyrocketing.
It is.
And all of their equipment is heavy equipment.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
20%
100%.
Cars,
20%
tires.
a year or more in the last
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
Yep. So we
And it takes
really,
forever to get.
so we really appreciate you being able to bring this in under the 3.4. Yeah, you pretty much went over everything in your quarterly report. So
Yeah, I'm fine.
unless you have anything specific for us, I think we're good.
Didn't want you to get too comfortable.
Thank you very much.
That was easy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
Do we need to wait till 10:30 or we just go ahead and go?
I'm
Okay.
sure we'll get behind on one of these.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morning, John.
Morning, John.
Hi, John.
Planning and zoning.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Our proposed 2025 budget is a zero net increase. We're actually reducing our budget by 1.75%. 6 employees, we're fully staffed currently.
John, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I can hear
Is this better?
There you go.
All right, there we
I'm
go.
not ordering you done.
Sorry, I'm soft-spoken.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so this year's budget, 2025 budget is a zero net increase. It's a reduction of 1.75 from the 2024 budget. So we're not asking for any increase in any specific line item. This budget has met the established goals for 2025 as set by administration in this body. We see no large expenditures in the next budget cycle. The budget is relatively sustainable so long as additional services aren't placed on the department. If they are, then we'll have to see you next year at budget time. But with that, I would go through any part of the budget that you have questions on. The total budget for 2025 is $604,816. We see what appears to be a substantial increase in construction, a substantial increase in plating, a substantial increase in funds that are being pulled in. We changed the way we collect fees. That has been reflected in the numbers that you'll see next week in the quarterly report. So we're confident in what we proposed for you today, and unless there are specific questions.
Do you see any reason you'd have to add additional staff if things keep going like they're going?
I don't see a reason to add additional staff so long as the service level doesn't increase. For example, if we have inspection or we have some other element that's placed on the department, additional staff may be required depending on the level of additional requirement placed.
But within the
You mean
next
it's
year,
If the board decided at some point in the future they wanted to add additional services like building inspections, which we don't
Right.
currently, that would obviously require more staff. But
Right.
And would we do that, or would we use a third party to do that?
Well, that would be something we would have to boil the numbers
Be
down and see
expense.
what is more fiscally responsible, whether it's third party, what that adds to the market cost, or do we do that in-house and not impact your building permits and eventual overall cost to the consumer when they build a home?
It would require additional staff, and it'd be more than one person, wouldn't it?
Oh, it
Yeah.
would certainly be more than one person,
at
but
this point, we don't have any, I mean,
There's no
as
plans
far as I
yet.
know, the board did not anticipate adding that in any time in the future. But if we did, that'd be the only reason why they would
Okay.
so,
All
think
right.
about it.
right, so the reduction that you're seeing is actually in software for eventual inspection. Now, it's been part of the budget for the last 3 years, as far as I can tell. That line item was enough to purchase an initial subscription, but then you have an additional $7,000 to $10,000 a year in maintenance costs on pretty much every software program that are out there. So we didn't see a reason to keep that in the budget if it's not something that we're actually expending right now.
So one of the recurrent things that we've had to deal with is this issue of agritourism and farm wineries and where that fits in, with the state rules fit in with the local county rules. Has anything changed, and is that going to impact the way we do SUPs and therefore impact our fees and that kind of thing moving forward?
Well, as it relates, our stance has been on the SUP component that we're really, the only thing that we're issuing in the SUP is the event center. And from what we can tell from the new statutes that are out, that particular interpretation has not been affected. So no change in my view would be warranted through the SUP process as far as fees are concerned.
Okay, so what we've been doing, we could continue as far as the state law, as far as you understand it.
As far as I understand it, that's correct. Unless something changes, the way it stands currently, the event center component has remained unaffected.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good.
Any other questions?
This was pretty simple, too.
Yeah?
The ones that stay the same or go down are pretty easy.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, John.
All right, thank you.
Pay your office a compliment, because I know I've dealt with Kyle quite a bit, and I've dealt with several of the folks in there, and they have a lot of people to interact with and deal with, and when it's your land, emotions can really come into it, and you guys do a good job in softening the blow sometimes.
Well, we really appreciate the compliment, and I'm lucky to have everybody in that office. Thank you.
Yeah, I've noticed sometimes that some people come in and try to persuade you by using names.
Persuades.
Persuade by using names of people that are that have high names in the county or in the city, something like that. And I've noticed the way y'all handle it and treat everybody, in my opinion, the same as we're going across. And so I think that's something to be said for your folks in there. And I go along with what Mike's saying. What y'all handle and the things you do is very appreciated, John.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, clerk election.
Hey, John, was this fast as the budget I used to do with you?
Morning, Janet.
Good morning.
The last budget you're going to have from me. How about that?
Congratulations.
Yeah, what Vicki said.
You made it out alive.
You will be
So we're going to make it.
terribly missed.
Well,
Yes, you will.
We're going to make it really tough.
Last year was a tough one because of the major election.
Yep.
So this is
Yeah,
another budget that's
really.
gone down.
when you look at least the election budget, you'll see a decrease in there because next year is a, smaller election year, and with the election budget, it's high one and then low, and it's just kind of that roller coaster. The clerks is
It's flat. In fact, it's a little bit under also from what it was last year. I have no new, there's no difference in contracts that we have to deal with or equipment. Everything is just pretty well flat from the way it was this year.
Any commissioners have any questions?
No, I looked at it. It's,
Last
it's
year was
great.
kind of different,
Yeah, because of
different, but
Yeah, like I said, the ones that stay the same or go down are going to be easy.
easy to do.
I like it.
So just, I always like to, when you're in here, to reiterate, when we have an election, because people are talking about election integrity and the safety of the elections, every year after the election, you come in here, the chairman draws, is it 6 precincts? I don't know. It's a certain number of precincts. And then you audit those precincts. And the way you audit those is you count by hand the ballots that have been counted by the machine, and you compare the number that the machine produced to the actual number that is through the hand count. And every time you've done this, it is matched exactly.
Well, that is a true statement. That's an absolute true statement. And in fact, today, right before I came up here, we've started the testing for the August election. And we'll go out next week out to Cushing and test each one of the machines that will go to the polling places. I've decided to call our two-party chairs. I couldn't really decide what to do, but there's so much, so much doubt and everything with the elections. I wanted to offer to the party chairs that they can come out and watch me test. They can watch us tally those test ballots so that there is any misconception out there that we are doing something to lose the integrity of this election. So.
And I'll say it again, if the entire county or country did their elections in every state and every county like Leavenworth County does, we wouldn't have any issues.
Any questions?
Yeah.
And Kansas law allows those party chairs to have a poll watcher in every precinct if they so desire to watch your workers, and that is another layer of protection to our system.
All of it has to run through the office prior to Election Day. They have to receive an authorization form and a badge. And, of course, any poll watcher only, can sit there and observe. They cannot interfere with any of the election process. I appreciate the compliments that, you guys gave me when I sat down here. But I have to tell you that I have thoroughly enjoyed working with each one of you through all the budget processes that we've done over the years. I've always
Talk
felt,
about you.
respected by you guys, and I have enjoyed helping all the offices. I think that the county clerk's office really has an open door policy that we are there to assist any of the offices with, budget reports, any advice, that we may have. So I have appreciated you guys.
It's came a long ways because we used to have a third party, remember, years ago, come in here and help with the budget.
Yeah.
So, them were the days.
Really eliminating that with all the safe holds in place for budgets has really saved the county a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you don't have to have that third party
Yep.
involved preparing the budget worksheets. But you guys will be in good
Don't get
hands
it.
also.
It was It was good to work with the third party, though. I mean, our third party knew a lot about our county budget because they've done it for years.
Third party now. We
Yeah.
have
Well,
a-
this was before county
In-house.
administrator, though. This is before we had county administrator.
Yep.
But no.
So I've known two county clerks since I've lived in Leavenworth County, 1999, Linda Shear and Janet. And I just can't say more good things about your office and how you help people when they want to go vote. You always give good advice, and you're always nonpartisan about it. You help both teams, and you guys do a great job. And just a compliment to
They
everyone.
meet
you've done.
with, whenever you need something, they need to speak with her or her office. She'll go there, they'll come here. Yeah, I've heard nothing but compliments. I'm very pleased. You're going to be missed, young lady.
Yep.
Yeah. So you don't go back to the Larry Scheller days?
Well, that might have been before I was like
Out of high
interested in everything.
I was back, but, so I started working for Larry in 1980.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And, yeah,
In the late 1900s.
I tell you,
How many years
I
has
have
he,
seen a lot.
How many
He
years
started
was
in
he
'77, didn't he?
Oh, Larry was probably clerk. He went in when Charlie Turner was leaving. He fulfilled a
appointed.
term for Charlie Turner, so he might have been in there
1977, 78?
12 years, maybe
Back in
not
the
even
Carter
that
days.
long.
Yeah.
And I think Linda,
About 90.
she might have came in
About
I
1990.
was in high school when Larry got in
90
office.
maybe.
About 1990.
I just started. I 79. I was out in
I
Lansing
was
for some.
involved then.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first worked for Larry, before we had any election equipment at all, and we had boards out there hand counting every single ballot. And in 1980, we were up, I mean, all night long. Absolutely. I think we went home at 8 o'clock the next morning to shower and, came back.
Come on back.
So we've come a long ways because now you look at results coming in across the state, and by 10 o'clock
Yep.
in the evening, you usually have everything reported. I don't like to give my opinion on that, but I saw legislation coming through this year that people were talking about wanting the ballots to be hand counted again. And I'm thinking, you guys are going backwards. Already you complain, or people complain because they might have to wait till 10 o'clock to get
Yeah.
the results.
Yeah.
But if we were to go back to hand counting, it would be
No, thank you.
be a lot longer than 10 o'clock.
No, thank you.
But anyway, thanks, guys.
Well, thank
First
you.
of all, I didn't even ask you, do you have any questions
No,
really
no,
about
I
the
didn't.
budget? Or?
No, it's
Okay.
Look great.
And
Thank
if
you.
you guys, I'm not going to be around in my office next week while you're in Cushing because I'm going to get that. So if you need to land in that area, in my office to use the computer, the phones, whatever, feel free.
Oh, thank you. Enjoy your trip next week.
Maybe.
I know it's business. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Janet. Another one went down. Next, HR. Morning, Monica.
Morning, Monica.
How are you?
Hi, Commissioners. Doing great. How are you? My numbers are pretty easy to understand. There are a couple areas that we increased in, and I was able to find some areas that we could definitely make some savings in. So overall, for the new year, HR has a decrease of 3.34% in our budget from the previous year.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Definitely put pencil to paper. That's appreciated.
The change in our payroll provider definitely gave us a little bit of a savings there. And we've changed some of our protocols on drug testing, which helps save there. And although training and education are really big and we're pushing that this year, we were able to find some things to do in-house, as well as use our new Paylocity system to do our sexual harassment training and some things that we already had included. So we were able to
Monica, one of the best things I've had the privilege of being since I've been on my 3.5 years is for this governing body and Mark to break away human resources and put it as a standalone. It just seems once that happened, things started falling in place, training started getting better, and updates were even better. So I appreciate it.
And Monica, is there anything in your budget, like Mark was talking about earlier, how some departments have been able to put some things off, waiting for a better year? Is there anything like that in your budget that you put off this year that you're hoping you'll be able to bring back next year or the year after or something like that, or is it?
That training area would definitely be something. I mean, we can still do in-house. I can work with legal counsel to do some things ourselves, some compliance things that we can do in-house, but to have it a little more robust or to be able to offer more to our managers on different leadership trainings and safety and things like that, that would be an area of opportunity that we could definitely.
Okay, because I know how tough it is right now to hire people, so I just want to make sure you're getting what you need, for in that area.
I mean, I work with all of Ashley and Jenna as well. Work with all of the other departments on hiring. We have made a lot of improvements on our systems this year, so now you can actually apply electronically. You don't have to fill out a paper application anymore, and that's increased our applicant population that's coming in, so the traffic is a little higher.
That's good. Everybody's having trouble hiring.
Yeah.
Most places pay a lot more than we do, so.
Tells you that.
So how do you interact, like, with elected department heads as far as their hiring process, and how do they use the resources in your office to help them in their hiring processes?
They'll let us know when they have an opening available, or usually we know because we process the separation from the county, so we know that there's an opening that needs to be filled. We post the position for them, we gather applicants, and basically give those to the department head or elected official. They can go through those and decide which ones they'd like to move forward with and in the interview process.
And are you also monitoring the training as far as sexual harassment and those kind of things in the elected departments?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. When various elected department heads over time have, like the county will either give a 4% or this year a 2% raise. We give the base raise, and then certain elected officials are giving certain bump ups to various folks within their departments. Are you keeping track of that and monitoring that to where we can tell, certain folks in the county are getting higher raises than others?
Absolutely. Every single pay change that comes through has to have a justification reason. It has to have a process action form that's turned into HR, and that goes through myself and Mark as well. So we monitor every one of those that come through.
So, but that is totally at the discretion of the elected officials.
As long as they're within their budget.
Well, I mean, yeah, they have to stay within their budget. But.
That's why it's important in budget time to realize what's occurring on that, to make sure that all the other employees or all the other people that serve Leavenworth County are getting their fair share of what should be happening too. When you start going off one and you give them additional raises, I know they're elected officials, but you start giving additional raises to certain folks and it doesn't have any rhyme or reason, it throws the other people off, public works or out in the office. They're elected officials, but I hope they're looking at very close to what that does to a budget. And I got one important question. Well, I got a statement. I'm very appreciative that you changed the chili judging rules this past year. Thank you very much. Hey, Bill.
I hear you, Commissioner. I hear you, and I take action. I do provide guidance, Commissioner Stephen, on when they would come to me with pay changes. I can absolutely say, this isn't consistent with a promotion you've done in the past, and we want to make sure that we're staying fair and consistent amongst your department and amongst others. So I do provide guidance. Now, where that ends up sometimes, like Mark said, as long as it's within their budget. My department does make sure that they're staying within.
So as far as like the harassment training and the being equal to everyone. You're telling them, well, you're giving this person a raise, but you got to look out because it's
Correct. These are some areas you might want to consider. This is some, this could be perceived this way, or we talk about things and we make sure that those are good decisions to be made. And I'm actually really happy that all of our department heads and elected officials have utilized me. They come to me very often. They don't necessarily have to, and ask for conversations just to make sure that they're not doing anything that outlies anyone any other department.
So when we're talking about this kind of going to the macro, we're talking about doing a budget, and if a certain department head has gone above, say we budgeted for 2%, and they've gone ahead and done 7% or 10% raises, then when they come back to us and they want to have an additional amount added to their budget, well, the reason their budget is short is because they've spent above and beyond what we authorized.
I mean, potentially, right?
Yeah.
A lot of those increases through the year, they are minimal, but a lot of them are justified as a promotion or.
It is, except for the fact that when you're talking about fairness to all county employees, if we budget a 4% raise and then somebody else is getting a 15% raise, it's.
But sometimes it depends on what the licensing and professional,
I
the
understand.
profession and what it is that they're asking for and why. I mean, there can be a differential between those two things.
Yeah, when you see it every
Yeah, it's our
you
job
see-
to just monitor stuff.
But when you see it every year, year after year, that a certain percentage, certain divisions, certain departments are going up at a certain time every year, then it raises the question about why is that happening? I understand what you're saying, Commissioner. Things change and you got to get better people. But every year, if they're going up every year on that, then that seems like that's a red flag to me saying, wait a second, why is it going up every year for that kind of adjustment?
That's why they're in the red folder. The red flag. Right, Doug. Anyway.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thanks, Mom.
Did you have
Good
any
job.
other questions for me?
Good job.
Thank you.
Now here's where we're getting ready to make up for that time. Come on down.
And now
Easy on you.
somebody better order lunch.
Hey, Bill.
Now's the time.
Hey, Bill. I must say you beat me fair and square, so I'm only kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Two-time champions. Yeah. It's not holding against me during this budget.
A little too late for that, young man.
The only thing standing between us and lunch.
Yep.
Somebody better order lunch.
All right. Well, the Public Works budget is comprised of 4 separate budgets, as you guys know. There's the Road and Bridge, the local service, and then noxious weed and GIS are within the general fund. We do track our budget through a multitude of other funds. We have all of the township funds that still have some funding through planning and zoning and building permits that we do use for projects. We have the sales tax fund that is another fund that we utilize for road improvement projects. And then we have the 220 fund that we fund through both road and bridge and local service and hold that account to pay for primarily bridge projects. So currently, the budget that was submitted was done so at the direction that was provided with little to no increase. It is nearly, from a spending standpoint, from contractual services to commodities, a revenue neutral budget. That does equate to a significant reduction in some services. I wanted to highlight some of those cost increases that this budget does not reflect as far as keeping up with the true cost of inflation for those items. Metal culverts have increased 95% in the past 5 years. Concrete has increased 93% in the past 5 years. Asphalt has increased 48%. All rock products have increased an average of 38%. And then utility costs have increased. Postage has increased for our notifications. We did a 5-year glimpse, and then we compared that to what surrounding counties had presented as part of their budgets, and then we did a year-to-year increase cost. So this budget that as proposed reflects a reduction in services by the following percentages. Oil for Chip and seal is up 7.2%. Aggregates are up 13 to 14%, depending on the supplier. Asphalt is up 4%. And we do have a bit of a cost savings as we switched aggregate materials for the chip and seal from haydite to trap rock. So overall, we will see a reduction of approximately 10 to 12 miles of chip and seal road maintenance next year, and we will see a reduction in some of the amounts of gravel that is being able to be placed onto some of the county routes or county roadways that for maintenance items. It does not reflect a decrease in funding from a transfer to the capital improvements, so it held the same flat budget line item for the transfers towards future bridge projects. As you guys are aware, bridge projects are up probably 75% over the course of the past 4 years.
So, Mr. Knoll, can I ask you a question? Last year in the budget, when we were trying to come to our budget, your department was, we took a reduction, not a reduction in the increase that was proposed, $1.2 million out of your budget last year.
Yes, I don't have that number
I
specifically.
remember it.
Yeah, I know it was a reduction.
And we had other departments did not take that sizable of a hit. And then this year, I'm looking at this, and your department is going to go revenue neutral, and everybody else is increasing. So I'm not seeing I'm concerned about that.
It needs about $2 million increase.
Yeah.
That's
It's
my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I don't know a lot about it.
Well, it's just we've got departments of the county that are getting a hefty increase, and we have some people asking for even more. But here on this, one of the most critical parts of what the county does, which is infrastructure, we've got you are the person we're holding at revenue neutral. So I'm not saying that that's not what we're going to have to do because we've got a tight budget, but this is very concerning.
Mark, let me ask you.
I know it's wrong.
Let me ask you something, Mark.
I know it's wrong.
We're talking about. I think this is low, but I think we're talking about. Weren't you going to bring up after budget some areas that we needed to look at?
That's why Bill's bringing them up today. When they bring their budgets in, I ask them to present to you. This is the budget that we asked for in order to keep a flat mill levy, and that's what Bill's budget reflects. But there are items that we're not addressing with that. You may put them off for a year, but you're not going to be able to continue.
That's my concern.
Well, I don't like the kicking the can down the road on maintenance on chip seal.
And in public works, we've been doing that already for decades.
Right.
We've already been doing that.
Yeah, they took a hit last year. No,
we actually increased their budget quite a bit last year. Not as much as it needed to be, but we did increase it quite a bit last year. So that when we're talking about a reduction their budget still went up. This year, it's pretty much flat. But 4 or 5 years ago, was it 4 years? Bill and I came in, and Bill made a presentation to you about what it really would take.
Right.
And we were about $4 million short before inflation.
Right.
Before inflation. So we added about $1.6 million last year, give or take. That would still be about 2.4 short if there was no inflation. You just heard Bill's inflation numbers. So really, we probably didn't even keep up. Adding the 1.6 million didn't even keep up.
I agree with
The transfer to capital improvement needs to be about 75% higher. It needs to be about 1.8 million transfer to capital improvement just to try to keep up with inflation. That's not taking care of what we're 40 years behind on.
Yeah.
That's just so we don't get further behind. There was another line item. Probably commodities. That's another one that probably needs a 40% increase just to try to keep up with inflation.
Bringing that up.
Those things add up.
Years.
Just to keep up with the inflation in his area. And I know when people say, well, that seems like a lot of inflation. The cost of a truck has doubled in the last 5 years.
Exactly.
More than doubled, probably, if you can get them. Yeah. The numbers that Bill just quoted, those aren't numbers we made up. Those are numbers using the Metro Johnson County actually created numbers for their budget that reflect the same thing. Those numbers are 20% a year in some cases, and we're going up 2 to 3%, and getting beat up pretty hard over that 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
Johnson County acknowledges that they were where they needed to be to begin with. They're increasing their numbers so they can stay consistent. We weren't where we needed to be. We were $4 million a year behind, and we're not keeping up with inflation. Now, we've presented a budget that represents a flat mill, but you need to take into consideration it's not sustainable long term.
Yep.
There's two ways of sustainability. We're increasing too much, which you've heard me talk about some departments that do that, or we're not increasing enough because we can't maintain what we have. Bill's department his budget is not high enough to maintain the roads that we have. During our CIP discussion, Bill pointed that out, that we really shouldn't be putting new asphalt down anywhere.
That's right.
Because it may be nice for the next 10 years, but we can't afford to maintain it. The new asphalt costs more to maintain than rock roads. So we can't afford to maintain these new roads. Should we really be creating them? Until we address maintenance, we shouldn't be talking about new. Just a lecture. I get it. My soapbox here that I was standing on for a minute.
And there are some employee issues that are reflected in this budget as well. As you can see from the 2024 projection to the 2025 projection, we did reduce staff by one. We had an empty intern position that hadn't been filled in the previous 18 months. So we reduced that position, and we reduced overtime. We had allocated money for snowstorms. Those are always variable. We do have a very high turnover in the department at the entry-level positions. And so we do have the periods of time between employees. We are always able to fill those positions eventually. But there are periods of time where those positions are vacant while we advertise. So that money isn't being spent out of salaries and can be used for overtime for snow removal. But it is very dependent. As you see, there is a $5,000 reduction in salaries. And so in order to get to that point, we reduced overtime allocations, and we reduced that position, eliminated it. Currently, the metropolitan area, another piece of information regarding unemployment, is the unemployment rate is 2.7%. So there are probably at least 2.7% of the people not even looking for a job. They don't currently need employment to live, and so they aren't looking for a job. So the folks that are out looking for jobs are looking for opportunities for higher pay, and in many instances, or advancement through some sort of certification. Well, what we do offer is CDL certifications. And so we end up, in some cases, a training ground for those folks looking to get their CDL, because they've changed the laws regarding CDLs, and you can no longer as easily access those facilities. Generally, you have to pay to go to a training facility, $4,000 to $5,000, and get your CDL. And so now you can come and work for the county, get your CDL, and then oftentimes those folks that are better employees then use that certification or that licensing in order to get a better paying job. And so we are behind as far as pay scale goes from a private to public sector difference. I don't know that we're any further behind than we were in the past when we compare ourselves to other communities within our county, or even to the west or north. If you go south, though, you do get higher pay scales and you get sign-on bonuses.
So what's the percent that this budget went up from last year to this year?
It went up $207,000 on a $13 million
You know what the percent
budget,
was?
so
Does that translate in?
I don't have that. I had that when I was preparing the budget.
Well, I do know that you're about 30% of the total budget last year, 27 to 30%?
I think it was around 27%.
Okay. So, but what was, there was one higher last year.
Yes.
Bill was not the highest percentage last year, if I remember right.
No.
I believe it's law enforcement.
Huh?
It was law enforcement.
The law enforcement covers
Sure,
court
the sheriff-
system.
The sheriff's office
But it-
budget is higher than the public works
That covers me.
Does that
Okay.
historically
Does that
been
include,
budget. Not counting local service, but
no, but when you talk about law enforcement, you talking about courts and county attorney and all
no,
that?
just talking about the sheriff's office. If you
Okay.
include courts, county attorney, community corrections, the
Detention.
sheriff's office with detention and dispatch and everything, that's nearly 50%.
Okay.
Has that over time percentages changed compared to the public works?
I would say that those budgets have grown faster than public works, yes.
Well, my opinion, we need to try to figure out if we can get, without raising the mill levy, $2 million more in public works.
And I'm glad you guys both brought that up, because that's what my plan was going to be, is go over all the departments, see where the chips fall, and then figure out how to funnel some money
Back to public
more
works. to the road
into
department.
public works.
Because I don't like the when, they're going to have to defer maintenance on our asphalt roads, and you do not save any money by deferring maintenance on asphalt roads.
Yeah.
When you're talking about not being able to chip seal, that's kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
If you can keep them roads sealed up, they're going to last longer.
To get public works back to sustainable for maintaining the assets that we have, we need to find between $2 and $4 million more a year to put
Well, I
toward
think
public works.
2 would be great. I'd even settle for $1 million, but 2 would be where I think they need to be.
Yeah, so I'm glad Mike said that, because that's what I think.
But I don't know where we could cut
I
$2 million.
I think you're coming in here with a almost revenue neutral. I mean, this is just almost hardly any increase than other departments of the county are going to have to look at being willing to share the burden here.
He's just also pointing out the services that you're going to lose in accomplishing.
Yeah, this is a reduction in services for sure.
Yeah, and it's
which we can't sustain.
and we may not be able to come up with $2 million.
I know,
But
I
we,
know,
you
but
know,
that's a goal.
Yeah.
All right.
But
I'll
I
reach
think
for the
we have
stars.
to look at the large departments, and we have to see, how over the last 3 years, how those departments have been funded, and realize that where we took money out last year to get down to where we were, primarily was in public
Road and
works.
bridge. Mhm.
So this year, somebody else is going to have to take more of a burden sharing.
So,
I agree.
I don't know how you can get here without a mill levy increase, honestly. A half,
that might be.
half or a quarter. There's a couple of departments we've talked about already today that I think should really, elected positions should really take it real hard and try to help us out here. But this type of money, you can start going to $1,000 here, $500 there. It's not going to add up to what we need to put over here. We're going to have to make a tough decision on what we really want to do and be willing to stand for it. And I don't see how you can get there without some type of up in the mill. If that's what the board wants. If we want to do this, that's fine.
Among the public for that.
What's that?
I don't think there's support among the public for that.
Well, then you're going to get what you're going to get.
Well, and that's because people don't understand the problems we inherited. We should have been replacing 3 bridges a year every year for the last 20 years, and we've been doing half a bridge.
Well, let's see where we can get once we.
Yeah,
work
and that's what
together.
I'm
Well,
saying.
that's
I wanted
why
to
I'm
look at
throwing
all
it out
of it
there
and then see if we can
because,
revisit it. And Bill, I think we're bringing that up just so you know that's kind of our plan, is look at all of them first and then go back, readdress public works.
I'd like to weigh in on it a little bit.
Yes, sir.
When we talked about where our goals were for the budget, and then we went back to the department heads and asked them to submit budgets, they did a really good job. And they submitted budgets that would allow us to get to a flat mill levy, including the increase, and we haven't talked about that yet, but we will, the increase in the health insurance. That was a hefty, that was over $1 million that we had to pick up out of this budget and still try to maintain that flat mill levy. That means a reduction in services. That there's no other way around it. We weren't setting on $1 million. Unlike the state, we don't have a slush fund. So Bill's department is one of the largest departments. only way you can hold a flat mill levy is holding him flat. If you want to increase what he spends, which I think it needs to, I mean, from a maintenance standpoint and just being a good steward of our resources, he needs more money. There's no doubt about it. But I'm telling you that you either reduce services in road and bridge or you reduce services somewhere else. There's not $1 million to $2 million hidden in this budget that you can give to another department. It's just not there. You will have to require a reduction. And as I said last year, I'll say it, and I say it every year, there's only 2 real budgets out there that are large enough to take a hit. You have the Sheriff's Office and Public Works. They're a majority of our budget. Most of these other budgets, you've seen some of them already this morning, you'll see more this afternoon. If you took the whole budget away, it's not $500,000. And $500,000 is about $1 million is a mill. So $500,000 is about $500,000. You can take their whole budget away and not get to $500,000. And when we're talking that the Road and Bridge Fund is probably underfunded by $2 million, it's just not there.
Still not going to get there.
It's a hard decision, and it is one that you guys have to make every year, and that it's the most difficult decisions you make each year, but the most important, and that is the budget. So when we're talking about still needing another 1.2, even if it's just $1 million, you have to come with the realization that that means a reduction in services somewhere. The other thing that's the kind of the elephant in the room is we also have the courthouse that we're going to have to address. The $4 to $5 million that's going to have to be spent on this courthouse has to be addressed. Now, I've set aside money in this budget. I can take it out. I can give it to Road and Bridge. But you're going to have to spend it somewhere. So you either I give it to Road and Bridge and you increase the mill levy to fund the courthouse, or I keep it and you increase the mill levy to fund Road and Bridge. But it's an increase in the mill levy to take care of that. The $500,000 that I have set aside in here will hopefully pay for the repairs on this building in the next 10 years, which is, that's the best I can do. I hate to go 10 years to pay for a roof or the other rock that needs to be fixed because more is going to fail in the interim. So I hate to do that, but that's the best I could do in this budget. Maybe next year we can get a little more. But that's what we've done, and I'm just telling you, Bill needs more money. He's going to have to reduce services if he doesn't get it, but it's not hidden somewhere in this budget. There's just not $1 million here.
No, and that's the prioritizing. You've got to decide maybe somebody else. But I don't think it's fair for Public Works to take the entire hit of him coming in with a revenue neutral budget and everybody else isn't.
I think you're going to see throughout the rest of this day, there are not budgets coming in with increases included in the budget. There are going to be departments who ask you to consider giving them additional resources, but there are not budgets coming to you that have additional money in them. The sheriff's budget doesn't have an additional $1 million in it from last year. It's a reduction. The county attorney's office does not have an additional $200,000. It was a hold the line budget like we asked for. That every department is there. There's nobody came in and said, Mark, I'm going to have that $500,000, and I said, sure, put it on there. It didn't happen. It's just not there this year.
Hopefully our valuations will go up again and we'll have more revenue.
Well, I don't think we got to worry about that, Mark. I'm pretty sure they're going up.
And I think when we have other departments come in, you're going to hear a similar story from them. Not as severe as Bill's because his budget's so large and he takes care of so much. But the other departments are going to have a similar story in that they just don't have the funds they need to operate sufficiently.
Well, it's obvious to me what we've heard already today from the other departments, something like that. They've all done an excellent job keeping it where we asked. The problem is, eventually, whether we want to be the bad guy or not, we're going to have to face this. And if you're going to fund these things, whether we pass it on down to people after us or whatever, it's coming, and it's not going away.
Well,
And it's
hopefully
gonna
the
cost more every time we
legislation,
put it on.
hopefully the legislation one of these days will deal with property tax and all these unfunded mandates that they shift back to the counties and the cities.
That drives me crazy, Doug. You're absolutely right.
I mean,
There's no excuse
that's
for
why
that.
we're in we're in the predicament we
Yep.
are.
Yep.
If you go through the list of all the unfunded mandates, and over the last 25 years, everything has been shifted back to the locals that used to be funded by the state. This is exactly why we're here today.
Well, the LAVTR
By itself
would
would
have
have.
been $4 million
Exactly.
that could have addressed what we just talked about.
Yep.
And then some.
Yep.
So that is money that they had. They
Right.
set aside statutorily. They were supposed to give it to us, and they voted not to.
And
And
throw
then
in-
this year, they just really coup de grace. They just did away with it. It's no longer exists.
and the city county highway funding sharing fund.
Yep, that's another one.
They changed that.
And the $4
Okay.
million was just the
For-
county's
That
portion.
was just our
That
portion.
doesn't count what the cities.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
So when you see your legislatures, please be sure and thank them for that.
So to segue into the unfunded mandate portion of our budget, the noxious weed department budget came in at under the 2.5. We did that primarily by reducing the amount we're funding towards chemical sales. So chemicals are up. As you guys are fully aware, chemical prices have gone way up in the past 5 years. We will buy all of the chemicals that we have budgeted, and when we are out of chemicals, we are out of chemical. That's basically
All we can do.
the only way that you can maintain that type of the 2.5% is to only offer that discount until you are out of funds for that.
Yep.
At that point, we will wait and see if we have any feedback from anybody at the state level. And then the GIS department is also part of the general fund. And working with the Register of Deeds office, she was able to fund or offered to fund the aerial photography through her GIS through the Register of Deeds Tech Fund for next year, which allowed us to reduce the transfer to equipment reserve by $12,500, and that put us at a point where we could come in at the 2.5% with the insurance increases and the salaries. Both of those departments are fully staffed at this time.
I just want to make a compliment to Bill about the GIS department, his ability to attract and retain some really good
Yes.
staff. Some changes that we've made down there, and we've just been super fortunate.
Yep.
They're just amazing what we can do, the technology that we have, and what they've been able to generate for us. And I'm really happy with that.
They do a very good job, and as you guys are aware, Soma is a PhD, but we also just recently hired a new GIS analyst position who's also a PhD, and so we have 2 PhDs and an employee staff with a master's degree. So of the 4 employees we have in there, we have 2 PhDs
Wow.
and a master's degree
Wow.
employee. So
pretty
we're very
impressive.
lucky with the education level that we currently have and the skills that they do possess. Someone does a great job of working with them.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Thanks, Bill.
Let's talk
yeah.
about local
Whoops.
service a little bit.
No,
So local
perfect.
service is a lot like Road and Bridge, obviously, but we're maintaining the local roadways. We came in with that budget as directed, and it faces the same shortfalls as of many of the other categories because we do buy culverts and concrete and equipment. We try to do as good of a job as we possibly can and look at all the government purchasing options and government leasing. We do have in the public works budget our fleet coordinator, fleet operations. Frank does an excellent job of putting out the specs and looking for those government lease options that are out there or purchases for some of the equipment under government purchasing to try to reduce those. But those costs are up. And graders are paid for out of the local service budget, and I anticipate that those costs will continue to increase over time. We have gone from guaranteed buyback programs in the past to lease programs with guaranteed balloon payments if we wanted to purchase those pieces of equipment. So they're very much similar to the guaranteed buybacks. It's just that we don't own the equipment. We can bid the 5-year or 7-year value of that piece of machinery, as well as the annual cost, to do a comparison of the total cost of ownership for each piece of equipment.
Commissioners, in the past couple of years anyways, we've slid the local service mill levy up slightly. This year it does not have that as a flat mill levy. There's no adjustment to it. It's just a flat mill levy, so that's where we're at with it.
I will say after this winter that we did have with the extended snow and the freezing and thawing, our rock and our commodities budget is short for the end of this year. We did have to re-gravel the majority or all of the county roadways at that point, which was approximately $315,000, I believe, on gravel in order to get all of the roads into what we considered an acceptable level of service after the winter. But as you guys have already heard, a lot of that has seen about a 14% increase in cost.
Okay. Any other questions for Bill?
I do not.
I just want to, I don't know if you were here earlier when I mentioned we really appreciate all the grants that he brought to Leavenworth County. I heard Jefferson County hasn't won a single grant since you left there. So we
I don't
really,
think that, I don't know. I don't track every other county, but we've been very lucky or done a good job in putting together some grants. And
It's not luck. It's because how hard you guys work. You guys work on it. Believe me, those are hard to get.
Skill.
yeah, on behalf of the taxpayers, we really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You put a lot of work into that.
Millions of dollars
Yes.
that go directly into infrastructure.
That's right.
Tens of millions of dollars.
Much appreciated.
the one that I'm really waiting to hear and see about is the Ike Transportation Program. We did do that study for the Regional Transportation Capital Improvement Plan with KDOT and all the cities and the Port Authority, and they did select K5 for that project, and they have put out that it's on a 7-year construction time frame with 2 years of public input and development, and then 2 years of design. So it'll be very interesting. They only announced that opportunity as a $36 million project, but from our meetings with them last week with the design firm, that number is going to exponentially increase. Obviously, you guys know the alignment issues and the safety concerns that K5 possess.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that that'll be.
6 million?
Yeah. You couldn't add shoulders.
It's like maybe 360 million.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But it'll be very interesting. But that was probably, we've been very successful in grants as far as KDOT is concerned, and working with the cities.
36 million.
Yeah, 36 million is not going to cover a lot. But it'll be very interesting. I think that project could potentially, with the scope increase in the money we receive through that process, be significantly higher. And some of our totals up way over $100 million in the past 5 years for projects that we've been able to secure.
What about County Road 30? Where are we at on that?
So County Route 30 has been a real thorn as far as the bureaucratic process of an earmark. And so we have applied. No one really understands, because I don't think anyone in the state has gotten a federal highway administration earmark before, so KDOT doesn't have any staff that is familiar with the process either.
DeSoto Road was one 20 years ago, Bill.
It was
DeSoto Road had an earmark.
20 years ago?
20, maybe 30.
It's probably a lot easier 30 years ago before they created some of this red tape.
Yeah, there was some
It seems like Leavenworth County ought to be getting more earmarks, being the 6th largest county in the state. But
Well, they did away with earmarks for a while, but
yeah, that was a no-no word. You're right.
yeah. So We applied through KDOT to be local project administrators and be able to administer the projects ourselves to try to move the time frame up, because we are still trying to see if we can overlap our Kansas cost share grant with our earmark in order to secure that $1 million in funding for the project. But the earmark has now kicked us into a federal environmental review process, as well as many other processes that we are currently going through. In fact, we just submitted yesterday the what's called the 1302 form, which is the project administration form. And there was a lot of discussion on how to even handle that form. So obviously with inflation, it has to be in the Mark Transportation Improvement Program, the KDOT Transportation Improvement Program, and on our 5-year CIP. All of the cost figures for all of those different improvement plans were different. And so we are trying to reconcile those, because obviously one's from 21, one's from 23, and one's from 24. So the cost of this project continues to go up. We are hopeful we can get through the environmental review in 120 days. That would put us in November, and then hopefully bid the project in December. But if anything comes up in the environmental review, which I think 9 agencies look at it, then we could be kicked back and be asking KDOT to work with us on the cost share program again, or they could potentially reallocate that funding, and we'd be just working on the $2 million earmark. It does also kick in other federalized regulations as far as the Davis-Bacon wages are going to be required on the project, so it will have a different pay scale. There are going to be we'll have to fill out a monthly 1313 form, which is some sort of accounting tracking form.
Bill, you're correct. When Lindsay got that one, I never saw how many hoops we had to jump through. We had $2 million also. And some of the things you mentioned, by the time it came back to us, we had to get it spent after so many years, but we waited till the last year to do it because there are so many things we had to accomplish or try to find funding that we didn't understand.
Yeah, and I assume that it'll increase the cost by a certain percentage for sure. So of the $2 million that we did receive, we might spend $300,000 or more.
I was going to say probably more.
Just kind of like you guys have spoke a lot about this building being on the historic registry and where that cost breakover point is. Well, there is a cost associated with federal grants, way more so than all the KDOT grants that we've received. And so there will be an increased cost to the project by several $100,000 minimum.
So we're holding our breath to see the environmental impact to see if we can even bid it in November.
We're just reacting day to day, continuously over the past 3 weeks.
What'd you say, Lee?
Every snake.
Oh, don't even go there.
In West Mary.
Or Venezuelan cliff swallows.
Administer the project ourselves. So almost on a daily basis, we're going back and forth with KDOT over the past 3 weeks to try to we did get the environmental review started.
So
we'll see.
Well, I'm hopeful that it will work out. What about the additional request for additional funding that we talked about?
I received a call from Senator Moran's office about 2 weeks ago asking us if we were still interested in receiving funding. Obviously, I answered yes, and it was moving forward quickly is what they said through committee, just the general earmarks, but they had no assurances on whether we would receive it. But we were still on their list to see if we still had that listed as a project that we would be willing to do if we received funding. So,
and that's an additional $4 million.
Actually, we applied for
$8 million.
Just to finish. We applied to finish all of County Route 30 with a 25% match. When you look at the billions of dollars in the
just got to get it first.
Yeah, when you look at the billions of dollars that people are asking for in funding, the difference between asking for $5 million and $8 million isn't significant, and so we just asked to complete the entire project all at once and not go through the process multiple times.
Well, we'd have a tough time coming up to the 25%, though.
Yeah.
Sales tax.
Well, it'd be
Well,
sales
yeah,
tax.
but
It's
for
covered
sales
in the
tax down, if they pass legislation where certain people don't got to pay sales tax on $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
purchases. Our sales tax could be down. Could be.
Yep.
Well, first we have to get awarded the grant, which we were able to do this time around. And they call it directed spending. It's not earmarks.
Yeah.
So it's directed spending. And then we have to figure out how the state can get us the money, because the federal government gives it to the state, and now
right.
so we're not fighting. We're struggling through the process on how to get that money from the state.
Yep.
And what doesn't help anything is, you remember, they didn't approve their budget until like 6 months into the year, their fiscal year. So we only get the remaining 6 months to address this. And normally we would have had over a year.
Well, thank you for all your efforts. I know the people out there, if they get this project done, they're going to be very thankful.
Yeah. There's a lot of people wanting it.
Including us.
Yeah, including me. I would love to see it break ground immediately. There's several projects out there right now that I'd love to see finish. But
So you're looking at a December bid at the soonest.
we're very hopeful that we bid it in December, by December 31st. And
We need to bid it before December 31st, because they have to award the bid. You guys might be here on December 31st if that.
it doesn't have to be awarded. It has to be publicly advertised.
That's okay. We'll get Jeff's
So
band.
publicly
Gladly.
advertised by
We don't want to meet
Get your band up here on
New Year's Eve.
Gladly. I have a party.
Hey, that kind of money, I'm
That's what you
here.
just said.
On New Year's Day, New Year's Eve.
And next week, you guys will get probably a Facebook notification. The Bridge A60 was completed. That one really had no hiccups. It was the bridge that we used the KDOT simple construction method on, the simple steel beams. Reese Construction did that project. It's a dead-end road, and we were able to leave the existing bridge in place until the new one was constructed. So that bridge is fully open, and yesterday we received our new bridge number.
Is that the last wood bridge we have in the county?
That's the one that had the nails coming.
Drive the nails back in once a week, so we can get flat tires.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right.
Lunch break?
12:30.
We break for lunch now?
Barbecue.
Back at 12:30.